Hi, Manpreet.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Manpreet. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. We're going to start in about 9 minutes. Thank you for being on early. Thank you, Raleigh. Thank you for showing yourself on the screen.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. The guest of honor will be here probably around 11 exactly, or a little bit before. I put in the chat the link to the Tony Marshall Project video, which Shadow Ridge students and Sultana High School students made. It's a docudrama. It's a little bit, documentary. It's a little bit fictionalized view of his life, some of the key episodes of his life. Check it out if you can. It's called the Tony Marshall Project. And you could also Google that on YouTube, just Tony Marshall Project, and it should pop up.
I had a lot of my students, well, almost all of them, I gave them some links to find some research on him, and they did a little biography on him, a quick
There's a
one.
lot,
So
yeah, there's a lot of information on him. A lot of, we were the, not the first, but one of the first to actually document him on film. And all of a sudden, as soon as we did it, all these other people did it. And because he's pretty well known in the Vietnam era pilot community. He's a POW, guys. He went to one of those camps. He was captured and, beaten and all that stuff, and put into what was called the Hanoi Hilton. Hanoi is the capital of Vietnam. It's in northern Vietnam. And he was there when John McCain was there. And he was there in the last year of the war. After he was liberated, sent home. He went to the White House and he met with President Nixon. And, he's quite in my opinion, a true hero and a celebrity that should be recognized for what he's done. I mean, he basically fought for our freedom. So, and he's just a great, really knowledgeable man. And he's been through a lot, and but he's learned a lot. And so, unfortunately, with this whole COVID thing, we're not able to just invite people off the street anymore. He used to come to our school. Eventually, hopefully, we'll get back to that. But I first started having him come into my Hesperia High School classroom back in around 2005. So anyways.
That is so interesting, Mr. Hoffman. I'm so excited to hear from him and listen to him. I
Yeah.
really, really am.
Yeah, he is. He's very interesting. And I was telling Mrs. Jones, you know, he was lucky because like when John McCain ran for president in 2008. Some of you maybe don't know that. He just died like 2 years ago. He's from Arizona. And John McCain was horribly treated at that Hanoi Hilton prison camp. But when Mr. Marshall got there, it was the last year of the war. And he told me that they were, as they say, minding their P's and Q's. You know, they didn't want to create any issues because they knew the Americans were ready to negotiate a peace. So he said he was able to push the envelope, you know, quote unquote, you know, do crazy stuff without getting beaten or killed. And I was telling her how he, and maybe one of you can remember this question and ask him about the razor blade story, you know, tell us about the razor blade and how he, you know, took the razor blade out. There was another story I just remembered. I don't know what Mrs. Woodson walked by and reminded me. He said he had an afro, and he said one of his buddies blew like cigarettes smoke into his hair, and it went, you know, out like this. And he said one of the guards freaked out, thought he was like, you know, like, I don't know what so he did crazy stuff. Here's Mr. Marshall. So
You guys, thank you for,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, you
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, just if, so my class, I told them I'd really appreciate them showing themselves, just because I thought, you know, I told them I thought it was a little more respectful. But so those of you showing yourselves, I really, really appreciate it. And you can turn your cameras on. I really appreciate it. Okay.
Hi, guys. I'm going to invite, I think Mr. Marshall is here. I thought I
Yes,
saw.
sir, I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Yes. Hey, there he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Marshall. So we're letting some kids in. We'll probably get started in another minute or so. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. I was telling them 2 stories, and one of them was the razor blade story with Ugg, I think was his name. And the other was if I remember correctly, the smoke in the hair story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if we get around to that. I'll try to remember those and bring them up, because some of the stuff that you told me was really funny. And like, anyways, I'm sure you'll get into that. So, all right, we got good. Come on in, guys. Let me see if I can invite. There's Mrs. Woodson. I'm going to invite Mrs. Fisher as well, real quick. I know I already did. Oh, Mrs. Fisher's our principal.
Okay.
I don't know if you've met her. Maybe you have. I don't remember.
I don't remember.
It's been so long with this whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
You know, I can't remember anything, it seems like. But anyways, all right. So I'd say within about another 30 seconds or so, we'll get started. But I just don't want a bunch of ding-a-ling, ding-ding-ding when he's trying to talk. So that's good though. I'm so happy all these students are here. So are there any comments you guys want to make offhand, Mr. Marshall? Go ahead and put it in the chat, or just make a comment.
And feel free to ask questions.
By all means, please.
I might not want to answer them, but you can ask.
Yeah, hopefully we had some of the students read over, so they got a little background information on you, and some of them had prepared questions from what they read. So
Okay.
later on during, I guess, whenever we do questions, then I'm hoping they will ask.
So ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started. I apologize for the beeps, but I don't want to waste time. And so anyways, this is Mr. Marshall, and he's a friend of our schools. He's been coming to, to Sperry Unified School District functions to present on Veterans Day for many, many years. Gosh, at least 10 years, I would say. And so he's been coming until the shutdown. He used to come every year to our veterans celebration. which was either held at Canyon Ridge or here or at Mojave. So Mr. Marshall is a World War II. I'm sorry, that's wrong. I knew that. It's Vietnam. He's a Vietnam veteran, F-4 fighter pilot, went to the U.S. Air Force Academy. And as you guys know, he was shot down and captured. And but he lived a really storied life. Got to go to the White House and all that stuff. And I'm going to let him talk about his experience with you growing up and whatever he has in mind. But it's really important. You know, this man to me is someone you could really look up to and say, if you're looking for a blueprint, how do you live your life? You know, you're not quite sure this is the man that you would look up to, because he really has had a major impact on our students. And you know, you just listen to him, you know, this guy is, he's legit. And he's going to give you advice that, you know, that's not going to lead you astray. So, and I always used to bring him in because I really like his views on, you know, just basically what you should do right in life, his leadership skills, and what's right and what's wrong. And I think his life has kind of prepared him to be able to talk about that. And I was just saying earlier that, you know, we did a film about him, but there are others that have actually interviewed him. And if you Google his name, you'll see a lot of people have actually interviewed him, because Mr. Marshall has a lot to say, and he's significant in our history. He's a true hero. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Marshall. I don't know if you guys could give a little clap for him. So Mr. Marshall.
Good morning. So first off, this is a leadership group, right? Okay, because my story begins at birth. I'm programmed to be a leader because I was firstborn. And historically, the firstborn is programmed to be a leader because you have to lead your siblings, your younger siblings. And then, of course, you lead the rebellion against your parents also. But sometimes you get in trouble, sometimes you don't. But my role models growing up were centered around the family. My grandfather was a sharecropper, but he was highly respected in the community. He was a community leader. And my uncles took the place of my dad, who was absent. But I had one uncle who could fix anything. You know, give him a pair of pliers and a piece of wire, he could fix anything. Another uncle was a cab driver in DC. He gave me my first 2 cars. He could tell you any place to go in DC, any place you could find a parking place. And anytime I needed to be chauffeured anywhere, because we didn't have a car, he was there. I lived with him when we were homeless. So he was one of my heroes. And the close-knit family was really essential to my growing up. High school, all my teachers were role models. They all wore ties. They were professional. 2 that stand out were Mrs. Rich, who was the reading teacher, who I didn't need a reading teacher, but I used to hang around her room and she used to give me a word a day. But the most profound thing that happened was one day a kid came in and said, "Ms. Rich, I don't have lunch money." And she reached into her purse. She only had $1 left. She gave it to the kid. And I asked her, why would she give away her last dollar? And she said, well, if I need one, somebody will give it to me. So that was the beginning of Pay It Forward. But the other one was Thelma Gardner, who was a guidance counselor, who told me I should not go to a local college because all I would do is come home and party on the weekends. So I should get out of town and go to the Air Force Academy. So that was the beginning of my adventure. So I was and again, this is my pedigree, I was the first kid from my high school to go to any military academy. And of course, it was an all-Black high school, so that led to some complications. But I was the first person on my family tree to be an officer in the military, first pilot on my family tree. So pedigree, I've had lots of things. I was the 13th Black graduate from the academy, the only Black prisoner of war. So lots of little things like that that sort of formed me. The Academy brainwashed me, of course, and I really became gung-ho, really wanted to go fight. So I went to the war. Oh, and at the Academy, there were only 2 Black officers there. One was the law professor. So that was another one of my mentors. Curiously, I never heard about the Tuskegee Airmen while I was there. And I'll talk more about that later. But got out of the Academy, went through nav school, went to pilot training, went to Vietnam, obviously got shot down, messed up one day. And but it turned out to be a good adventure. Heroes, like I said, Sam Morrow was the law instructor at school. Chappie James was a Black fighter pilot. Dick Tolliver was a F-15 squadron commander. So I had a few role models to look up to, but throughout my Air Force career, I was generally the only Black person in the squadron. So that, again, led to a lot of unique situations. At the Academy, I had roommates who were primarily from the South, and we sort of looked at each other cautiously when we were paired together. And then we got to know each other and found out that, you're normal. You're just like me. But of course, they ended up saying, I can't take you home because my daddy would kill both of us. But we developed some seriously good bonds there. And of course, in the military, you rely on your fellow personnel to save your life. So you don't care what color they are. So I became basically colorblind. One curious thing was the white friends would take me to a party and I would stick out like a sore thumb because I was the only Black there. They thought that was normal, no problem. So I decided to take them to an all Black party. That opened their eyes because they stuck out like a sore thumb, especially when the Black girls would say, what are you doing here, Whitey? So it was out of their comfort zone. So we exchanged circumstances like that. But all in all, it was a fantastic experience going to the Academy. Obviously, it was free. They paid me. That was the price I paid for them brainwashing me. But I loved it. Not the only, but the most important class they had there was just a little add-on at the end, which was estate planning, which told you should buy a house, you should not rent, you should not lease a car, beware of insurance salesmen, things like that, practical things that you could use. So anyway, got out of the Academy, went through training, got in the F4 quite by accident, or not accident, but they didn't have anything else that I wanted. So I was forced to take an F4, which again, worked out to be great. Went to Florida, went through training. John Allen, Bill Walton, and Fig Newton were 3 Black pilots there who were my heroes. Fig Newton became the first Black to fly with the Thunderbirds, made general and all that. But they were super role models. Convinced me that I should go to Thailand, go to the 13th Squadron, which I did because my squadron commander was super. He set that up. Went there, flew combat, had the time of my life. It was great. And I know you think I'm crazy, but take the example, you train for football. You don't want to sit on the bench. You want to get in the game. Just throw me in, coach. I want to go do it. And I want to do my best. So to abbreviate that, I flew for a year. I was supposed to go home and everybody told me you should go home. I decided to extend, which was a mistake in the end, but turned out to be a good move. Extended, ended up flying with a guy who was crazy, liked to take chances. And before the flight, I told him I would not accept him taking chances because he did one thing in particular every day. told him not to do that. He said he wouldn't do it. That was the end of that conversation, because anybody else I flew with, if they said that, they would live up to it. He didn't. He went and did it anyway. And I made up my mind at that point that I would never fly with him again. And that happened, but strange circumstances, because I didn't get to exercise that option. We got shot down. He was killed, I think. I got captured right away. The last report we heard from him was he started shooting, they started shooting, and the guys who were flying above us heard that on the radio, so they didn't hear from him anymore. And that was pretty much the end of him. And like, we can get into that story a lot later, but I want to get into a little bit about the leadership thing. And to be a leader, you have to get people to follow you, obviously. Sometimes you have people who are out in front, but are not the leader. They're just put in that position. Sometimes people are forced to follow them, but he's not a leader. A leader has to have the trust of the people under him. He has to have empathy. He shouldn't ask them to do anything that he wouldn't do, he or she. So to be politically correct, he or she. Let's see. In other words, to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. You have to be able to accept constructive criticism. You have to take responsibility for your actions. Okay, and you have to take care of your people. Those are the basic things that I found in people that I respected. There were lots of leaders, well, not a lot, but a few that I had no respect for. I had to follow them because I was a system. But that's my take on leadership. Heroes, I gave you the family heroes, but coming up through the ranks, there was at the academy, Flash Wiley was an upperclassman. He was cheerleader, very charismatic person. So he was one of my heroes. The Tuskegee Airmen, but again, I didn't hear about them until after I got out of college. Now, the curious thing about that is one of my teachers, a band leader at my high school, was a Tuskegee Airman, but he never told anybody. And it only came out after the first Red Tails movie. And a little known fact, a lot of the Tuskegee Airmen, obviously they were on top of the world when they were in Germany. They were heroes, they did a great job. They came home and they came back to the same racism. It's whites to the left, blacks to the right, go back to being in the back of the bus. And that was a slap in the face to them. What's worse is when they went back to their communities, they got a lot of backlash from the Black community. Is why would you fight the white man's war? So a lot of them just went underground. They said, you know, I'm not accepted in white society. I'm not accepted in Black society. I'm not going to tell anybody I was a Tuskegee Airman. Curiously, I went through that when I came home from Vietnam. It was an isolated event, but we did a presentation at a federal city college in DC. It was a Black college, and they were militant, angry Black militants. And they characterized me as an Uncle Tom. Why would you fight the war? And the silliest question they asked is, would you bomb Africans? And of course, they didn't like my answer. But when you get Somali pirates, Black Muslim terrorists, the groups that kidnap people, kidnap girls in particular, yeah, I would. And I'll get back to that in a little bit. But Chappie James, Fred Cherry was a Black POW. He had a unique story because his wife went off with another guy and spent all his money and everything. He forgave her. He was just a genuine troop, was not bitter about anything. So he was a good one. When I got to United Airlines, Bill Norwood, was the first Black hired by United. But he grabbed me when I got hired and said, forget your ego. You now have a new mission. That's to go out and recruit young minority kids. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Ed Dwight, who I've met recently, was the first Black astronaut candidate. Kennedy selected him to be first Black astronaut. And of course, when Kennedy got assassinated, he got drummed out of the program. And I won't tell you who said something, but, and of course, Martin Luther King, everybody sees him as a thing. But one of the things that a leader has to have is loyalty. And something we don't think about is, who are you loyal to? And when you back it up, first thing is, you're an inhabitant of the earth. If we had an asteroid approaching the earth or Carillion battle star about to take out the earth, we'd forget all our petty differences. We'd all band together. The next level is the human race. If Jurassic Park or Rise of the Planet of the Apes came up, we'd again all band together and fight as a group. Then you get your country. So Germany and Japan were a threat to our country in World War II. Theoretically, everybody should be fighting for that. Blacks, whites, Jews, everybody. We didn't have that. So when you take away those first two threats to the earth or to humanity, we go back to Maslow. And your first priority is physiology, is just staying alive. Second one, safety. And then the third one is belonging to a group, love and belonging. And somehow that comes out when you take those other threats. And it doesn't matter whether it's your real family or, in the case of a gang, an artificial family. We tend to take that as our priority. You know, blondes have more fun. Blue eyes are better than brown eyes. Whites are better than blacks or Mexicans. Catholics are better than Protestants. And most of our wars are fought over one of those things. So, pure sense of system, we would all band together and fight a common enemy. But when we don't have that common enemy, we kind of get into our little petty squabbles. So that's where you get these differences. When I was an officer, you know, I could see white guys go across the street so they wouldn't have to salute me. I'd pull in my airplane and somebody would say, where's the pilot? I was sitting in a terminal in United one time. Somebody asked, you know, can you take my bags? Thinking I'm a sky cap. So you get those little slights, but that's basically ignorance. By and large, growing up Black, like I said, I was one of a kind in most cases. Because we were in combat or pretending to be combat, most people overlooked the racial thing. There were a few subtle things, but for the most part, race didn't matter. You know, you're counting on the guy next to you to save your life. So I don't care what color he is, what religion he is. So that's basically my blurb about my history. So let me take a couple of questions. That way we'll get to what you guys really want to hear. And
Okay, guys,
that window up.
do you have any questions? You can either, you know, okay, so we got a first.
Did you fly the plane or did someone else fly it?
I'm sorry, did I what?
Did you fly the plane or did someone else fly it?
Oh, in combat, I was the backseater. So it was not my fault that we got shot down. It was his fault. I would never take the blame for being shot down.
Why did that guy get you guys shot down?
He went after a boat that was hidden under a rock, and he had to pull out to avoid hitting the rock before the bullets would hit the boat. But he got it that morning. But on our last pass, we were supposed to be marking the target with a smoke rocket, and then we would orbit and call corrections off that. he was still going down, calling corrections off the smoke. So the only thing we can assume, he liked to shoot the gun. We assumed he was going down to soften up the target with the gun before somebody dropped a 2,000-pound bomb on it, which is absolutely dumber than dirt. The airplane was too low, and either the bullet hit the centerline tank or the centerline tank just collapsed. But anyway, it put us out of control. And
How did you get out in time?
Pardon?
How did you get out in time out of the plane?
Oh, now here's the funny part. I was changing the roll of film in my camera because I wanted to take pictures of the bomb strike. So I was not paying attention. That was dumb.
Mm-hmm.
He realized that we were not going to get out of the airplane. I'm not going to pull out. So he pulled the ejection handles. And the way the ejection works is I have to go first. So I'm sitting there minding my business, and I heard an explosion, which was a canopy going. And all I could figure out was you heard an explosion, but you didn't feel anything. And the next thing I know, I'm out of the airplane. And of course, the seat works magic.
It throwed you out?
Yeah, there's a cannon shell that shoots it up the first 6 feet. Then a rocket blasts you clear of the airplane.
With the parachute?
Then a parachute comes out and snatches you out of the seat. Blows you down. So
that's pretty cool.
Would you, Mr. Marshall, could you just briefly explain how you got captured? I think the kids might find it.
And the ejection is an e-ticket ride, which I know you kids don't know anything about, but in Disneyland, you used to get A, B, C, D, and E tickets, and the E tickets were for the good rides. So it was a real E-ticket ride, but I slept through it. I hit the ground, standing up, and I was talking to the guys still flying on the radio. And all of a sudden, there's 6 or 7 guys in front of me with AK-47s. And all I had was a 38, which wasn't loaded. So they captured me and marched me off to a little camp, little village. But
so they took you to their camp?
Yeah, they took me to a village with a little straw hut that they kept me in overnight.
Oh, they kidnapped you basically.
Well, they had all the marbles. They had AK-47s and I had nothing. So yes, I gave up. That was the end of my war. The only thing that went through my mind, and people say when you're going to die, your light flashes above you. No. The only thing that went through my mind was I was pissed off because I had been shot down. My little bubble had been burst. I was never going to get shot down. Here I was shot down 25,000 miles from my home on the opposite side of the globe in an undeclared war. I had no business being there, and they were going to shoot me, and nobody would know what happened, and nobody could do anything about it. That's what pissed me off. You know, sheriff couldn't do anything, FBI couldn't do anything, my mother couldn't do anything. I was just up the creek, and that made me mad. Luckily, they didn't shoot me, so we got away with that one.
Have another student ask, what base were you stationed at when you were in Vietnam?
I was at Udon in Thailand, which was the closest base to Hanoi.
Another student asked, what year was that?
That was 1971. So I was there from 71 to 72, spent the 9 months in jail and was released in 73.
Chelsea asks, how many siblings do you have?
I have one sister, little baby sister. And interestingly enough, my sister majored in protesting in college. If there was a protest in the country, she was there. And I went to her school in uniform one day and caught hell. But she still welcomed me home, and we are as close as can be.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, could you please share the story how when you were shot down, how they came to your mom's house and how you had told your mom what to do if that happened and so on?
Okay. Before I went off to war, I tried to brief my mother on the fact that I'm going to combat. And of course, she didn't want to hear about it. And she just protested, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. And the only thing I could get her to listen to was the fact that we had idiots in this country who would see in the paper that you were in combat, and they would call your house one day and say, hey, your kid just got killed, because they were bored. So I told her, if anybody called and said that, don't pay any attention to them. I would write every week. So if you didn't get a letter from me during the week, then have them come back. And sure enough, I got shot down. Of course, they have to notify the family right away. So the chaplain and the base commander drove up in the little blue staff car, rang the doorbell. And, you know, gee, Ms. Marshall, we're sorry to tell you your son's reported missing today. And she said, that's nice, thank you, and closed the door. It was beautiful. I loved it, because she was very stoic, very unemotional. And she just said, go away, no problem. So unlike people in the movies who fall out crying and hysterical and all that when you get the news, she was very calm about it. And of course, she said she knew I was okay. So that was her story.
A mother knows. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So student asks how you got back, and I don't know if you could talk about that. And then when that, I believe you said there was a funny story about when you arrived at when you landed, your mom was there with your sister or something.
Yeah. Well, when the war was over, Nixon got the Vietnamese to come to the peace talk tables. They released us, and you were released in sequence. The oldest guys that were there for 7 or 8 years got to go first. And if you were wounded, you got to go first. Well, I was not wounded, and I was a new guy. So I was there for the last group. The day before we were supposed to go, the Vietnamese came in and said, your side's violating the agreement. We're going to keep some of you. So they lined us up. The guy in front of me got to go. I got to stay along with 59 other guys for an extra day, just to mess with us. And then they let us go. So the Air Force flew C-141s in. We got on the C-141s, went to Clark Air Base in the Philippines, got processed back, new uniforms and everything. And I got to call my mother. In fact, one of my friends was injured, so he got to go early. And he called my mom to let her know that I'd be coming home. And I told him, don't be surprised if she doesn't get excited. And he called her and told her I was coming home. She said, yeah, that's nice. So he said, I don't believe it. But she was the same. So I called her and said, I don't know if they're going to bring me to Travis, which is in California, or they're going to bring me to Andrews, which is in DC. And she said, well, they better bring you to Andrews because I'm not coming out to California. And to back that up, she didn't come to my graduation at the academy either. She sent my sister because she was afraid to fly. But anyway, they brought me to Andrews. I got off the airplane, gave them a little speech, and they told the family, you have to stand behind the rope until he comes over there. Well, my sister came out, crossed the rope, ran and hugged me. My goddaughter, who was 3 years old, came running out because she didn't know what was going on. But my mother stayed behind the rope until I came over. And we went to the hospital, had a little glass of champagne. She had her glass of champagne. And she said, okay, let's go. And the doctor came in and said, well, no, we're going to have to keep him for a couple of days. And she went off on him. And she said, number one, y'all know damn well what time this airplane was going to be here. I don't know why you had me out here 3 hours early. And she said, I came to take my kid home. Now you tell me I can't even take my kid home. So she said, I'm going home. I'll see you when you get home. But that was my mother.
Wow. Another kid, I think you kind of answered this. What was the first thing you did when you had your freedom?
First thing I did was have 3 eggs and bacon. And then I had ice cream.
So from that, I can assume that the diet you had in the prison camp was pretty poor, or how would you?
It was what they ate, but you know, the worst thing was a pumpkin soup. It was like tomato soup, but yeah.
Great question here. Aaliyah says, how did you feel when you got captured? And I think you already said you were angry, but what advice can you give future airmen who get captured?
You know, it's strangely enough, I don't know how to explain this, but I felt like I would have missed out on something if I hadn't got caught, because so many of my buddies have been caught. I was almost relieved to be caught, but I knew the war was almost over. I knew that we'd be home by Christmas, so I wasn't worried at all. We were not fighting this war to win it. We had given up that spring. Bad guys were winning all over the place. There was nothing in this war worth dying for. So I was just flying for fun. When I got shot down, it's like, okay, let me see. I bought all the clothes I can get. I got all the stereo I can get. I haven't saved any money. Guess what? While I'm in jail, my money's going in the bank at 10% interest. Hey, this is a good deal. So I'm an optimist. I always look for the glasses half full. Like I said, I don't hate Vietnamese. I don't even hate pumpkin soup. I signed up to go fight. I signed up to fly fighters. I extended. What happened to me is my own fault. So no, I don't blame anybody for that. Like I said, a good leader has to take responsibility for his actions. And I think that's true of everybody.
This question here from Ashley. She says, were you there for the civil rights movement, or how did that affect you? I'm not sure.
I got my nomination to the Academy in '63, and the civil rights movement took off '63 and '64. The great thing was the March on Washington happened, and my sister, of course, was there. And she asked me if I was going. I said, no way, because the FBI was taking license plates. And the thing about a protest is you go to protest, but some idiot in the back throws a rock. Now you're in trouble, you get caught up and arrested. So I was not going to jeopardize my appointment. I was working on a farm that summer, and it was an Englishman who owned the farm. He had a German and a Scottish guy there. And the Scottish guy and I were discussing whether or not I should go to the march. And he said, there's going to be violence and everything. I said, no, there won't be. It's going to be peaceful. So that was my bit of international relations. And of course, it was peaceful. So we got to discuss that. And he was relieved that there was no violence.
So your sister was there when Dr. King spoke?
Oh, yes.
Wow. That's wow. Okay. Now, another student asked, how were you treated as a prisoner of war? And maybe you could talk about like the razor blade issue or something like that. Just,
Yeah, they tried to obviously play the race card, and that didn't work. They asked me if I wanted new roommates because one of my roommates was from Selma, and he and I started arguing day one, and not about race. He was a Chevy man and I was a Dodge man. So we argued about cars. And based on that, we argued about everything. It was just to pass the time. But they took that as a racial thing. And I just told them I didn't like people, so it didn't matter who I was rooming with. But I stole a razor blade, hid it. The guard came in and wanted to know where it was. Of course, he looked at me because I was a troublemaker in the group. We went out and looked for it. He couldn't find it. So I had to go see the officer. Told the guys not to say anything because I was not going to say anything, because they would traditionally come in and say, he told, so you guys have to tell too. But when I got there, the interrogator wanted to know about Martin Luther King. And I said, he's a nonviolent man. And he said, no, he's a violent man. And he went to Coretta's book, looked up Selma, Alabama, and read the part where before Dr. King came to Selma, when the Klan came to town, all the Black people would go hide under the beds. after he spoke to them, after Dr. King spoke to them, they would stand on the porches and thumb their noses at the Klan, which meant they were willing to fight, which meant he was a violent man. I thought, okay, that's perverted logic, but all right, you win. I let him win that one. He wanted me to sign a letter that all my brothers had signed. And I asked him how he knew they were brothers. And he said he could tell by the names. So if somebody was named Thomas Jefferson something, or George Washington something, or Willie something, he had to be Black. So my point was I had to go home and tell Willie Nelson and Willie Shoemaker that they were Black and didn't know it. So you could play little games with them because the cultural differences were immense. The Vietnamese hated losing face. They would die before they would lose face. So another one of my stories, when they were initially interrogating me, they asked me, they mentioned, what's her name?
You're talking about
Angela
slave?
Davis.
I'm sorry.
Angela Davis, who was a Black activist. And I said, I have a girlfriend who looks exactly like Angela Davis. And they were intrigued by the girlfriend thing because in their traditional society, your family chose who you married. You didn't have girlfriends or boyfriends. So I capitalized on that and made up 14 different girlfriends by the time we got to Hanoi. And I got bored with that story and created a wife and kid and had my wife send a picture of my goddaughter. The upshot of that was when they released me, because they didn't want to be accused of stealing, they gave me my wedding ring, even though I was single when I got there. Turns out it was my pilot's wedding ring. But they put everything together in a warehouse. And when they released us, they said, he's married. That was the other thing. They tended to believe the last story you told them. So they were very disappointed when the old guys came back and told about being tortured, because they said, we treated you nice the last 6 months. Why don't you tell them that instead of what we did for 5 years? So it's a very interesting cultural difference. They could not believe that only one family would live in an American house. You had to have 3 or 4 families there. They could not believe you could have 2 different newspapers in a city. There were lots of things that they just couldn't believe. So it was interesting.
Okay. How old were you when you first flew a plane yourself or with somebody in it, but you were flying?
I was 18. First time I got a ride in an airplane other than an airliner.
When you were captured, were you given a bed to sleep on?
The first night I was captured, they gave me a board to sleep on, and it had a straw mat, like a beach mat on it. And I could not go to sleep on the thing because they put leg irons on me and I couldn't turn over. So they eventually took those off. In prison, you got the same thing, but you also got a few blankets. But you had a concrete platform, a wooden bed, and then a little straw mat on it. So it was not the Hilton.
Even though it was called the Hanoi Hilton.
Yeah.
Did you fight in any major or small battles in the war?
Fought in lots of battles as far as, dropping bombs, air to air. We had a couple engagements with MiGs. The first time we bombed Hanoi, I was on that mission. So hard to tell.
Someone said that you had a 38 that was loaded when you were captured, but you didn't shoot it. Is that correct? Or
no, it was unloaded.
Oh, unloaded.
You had to carry the 38. That was regulation. When we first got there, I got a hold of some real bullets, some metal plated bullets that would do some damage. But the life support guys said those were illegal and they took them away. So I said, if all I'm going to get is a 38, which is like a cap pistol, I'm not going to carry this stupid thing loaded because I don't want to come down in the parachute and blow my foot off. And if I don't have time to load it, I'm in trouble anyway. So my philosophy was, you got a guy with an AK-47 and you've got a 38. If you shoot that thing, it's like shooting a cap pistol and letting everybody in the world know that's who you want to go shoot at. because the 38 is not going to hurt anybody, really.
I think you touched on this. Did your attitude about the Vietnam War change at all?
When I first got there, I was, completely gung-ho. I thought it was a great war. Once I got there and saw how we were prosecuting it, my mind changed. It's like, this is just a holding action. I'm here to fly, combat, hone my skills. And like I said, it was nothing worth dying for. A soldier basically will give up his life to protect his fellow man. That was not the situation. We were flying combat, and flying combat was pretty easy. You get in your airplane, you fly for half an hour before you even get to the war zone. You got 5 minutes of combat where you dodge SAMs, missiles, and MiGs. And then you got another half hour to unwind on your way home. When you get home, you're in Thailand. You can go downtown, have steaks. It's not like being in Vietnam where they rocket you and all that. So my thing was, this is an extension of peacetime training. It was graduate level. And the same thing with being captured. We had survival training before I went. Being captured was like being graduate school for survival. What can I get away with? They're not going to hurt me. I might as well play along and see what I can get away with. So toward the end, I basically said, this war is not worth fighting for. But I signed a contract to fight. So I always honor my contracts. I will fight. I won't take any stupid chances. But yeah, and it was pretty much like going to the range and stateside. A little bit of excitement, but no big deal.
Student asks, do you have any regrets from your war experience or your military experience?
I have no regrets at all about anything in my life. Again, I always take a positive attitude. Learning experiences. In life, you can kick yourself for two things. You can kick yourself for something you did, but in that case, why kick yourself? Just say, I learned a lesson, I won't do that again. But the worst thing is to kick yourself for something you didn't do. I wish I had done that. I would have done that. I could have done that. I should have done that. No. Again, take responsibility for your actions. Learn lessons from it and move on. So no regrets at all.
Since you've retired, a student asked, do you ever miss being in the Air Force?
I would love to have a jet to fly again, but unless somebody pays for the jet and the fuel, I won't do it. The Air Force has changed a little bit, but it was like a brotherhood. It was a family. Most of my close friends are from the military. So I'm still a part of the military family. But I had to turn the keys in and give them back their jet. That was the end of that. Then I went to United and had to turn their keys in too.
Student asks, when you came back, did you have any difficulty readjusting to society when you came back from the war?
None whatsoever. Again, I started my transition when I was over there and when I was in prison. I always looked ahead. And hey, prison was a good war story. So it set me apart a little bit. I got 10% interest on my money. It was a positive experience. It made me see a lot of things different. For instance, if you put the Vietnamese newspaper next to the Stars and Stripes, the headlines read the same. We shot down 200 of their airplanes and we had one blown tire on landing. We killed 400,000 of them and we had 2 people with broken arm. Both sides exaggerated, both sides lied. So you got to see a different perspective. We call it spin, but I call it lies.
Colin Majero, do you want to ask a question? You have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. Out of all the places you were stationed, what was like the most pleasant? Which would you like to go back to? Did you like Florida, California? Which did you enjoy the most?
Thailand. Thailand was by far the best experience. The people were very nice. Stateside, Florida has too many bugs, but the weather's nice. California is a desert, and I didn't like it at first, but I've settled here, and the weather's nice. The air is clean. People are nice. I mean, for the most part, in my neighborhood, we're nice. But stateside, if I had to move, I'm not sure where else I would go. There's tornadoes, and I'm allergic to snow. I will never touch another snow shovel in my life. You know, I grew up in DC, and I can recall standing out waiting for the bus with icicles hanging off my nose. No way. I had to escape.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We're almost done here. I wanted you,
One more
if one
thing
of you,
about that.
yeah, sure, go ahead.
You get stationed all over the world, and you get stationed in some god-awful places that you think you're going to hate. But because you're isolated, you form a bond with the community around you, the military community. And that's why we get to know each other. We get to know each other's family. And I can go anywhere in this country. There's somebody I can stay with them. I can use their car. It's just that bond from being stuck in some god-awful places. So I don't hate any place I've ever been stationed. Well, maybe Korea, but that's it. Go ahead.
You have a great, to end this, I thought it'd be great. President Nixon invited you to the White House. Could you kind of just tell them that story, especially the handshake thing?
Okay. We were invited to the White House. Nixon was on his way out, but he was the president. And we got to meet the president. And if you've seen Forrest Gump, you've seen the receiving line where you stand in line, 3 or 4 people before the president. You tell your name to one, he tells you your name to the next person. He tells your name to the president, and the president whispers something to you, same thing to everybody. I thought that was boring. So I gave my camera to the guy in front of me and said, just be ready. So I told my name to the first person. He told my name to the second person. He told my name to President Nixon. President Nixon reached out his hand. I shook his hand. He said, hi, welcome home, Tony. And he released his grip, and I was supposed to move on. But I didn't want to do that. So I tightened my grip and wouldn't let him go, just to see what his reaction would be. And he was very cool. He said, we're having a party in Georgetown and you're invited. And I thought, you win that one. He was nice. Instead of saying, get out of my face, boy, he came back with a good answer. So.
Did you go to the party, Mr. Marshall?
I did not go to the party.
But you got to shake his hand.
Got to shake his hand.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Are there any other comments or questions? Anybody? Let's see. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Marshall.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
Always great to tell war stories, but you guys should be leaders.
Please, can we invite you back sometime?
Sure, anytime.
Thank you very much. All right, guys, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, best of luck.
Have a great day, sir. And everyone, thank you for joining us.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.